Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I'd like to reflect on how my understanding of Australian housing crisis might evolve throughout this course. In assessment 2, explore Australian housing crisis using system thinking. I found that the housing availability is shaped by planning delays, investment in incentives, government policy, and stakeholder interests rather than a single course. This the focus create feedback loops that make change difficult. Although government continue to increase the housing supply, financing, governments and community stakeholder interests mean that the housing availability remains a complex challenge with no single solution. Looking back at assessment 2, I released an approach the housing crisis meeting as an anxiety. I focused on understanding how the system worked rather than considering my own role within it. The later weeks of this course changed that perspective. Reflective and refillable leadership told me to question my assumptions, recognize the bias, and learn through the experiences. Instead of asking, what is the best housing policy? I now ask, how could I influence this system? I now see the leadership as the observer relationship, understanding different perspectives and adapting to complexity. Reflection is uh, no longer about confirming my ideas, but about continually learning and improving my practice. The later cross connect change how I understand the housing system. At first, I focus mainly on housing supply, and I now see that financing governments and the measurement all shape with what is possible. Affordable housing often delivers lower financial returns, where government must balance affordability with economic growth. Responsibility is shaped across many stakeholders, making cooperation difficult. It also released that housing approval and affordability only tell part of the story. Housing security and community well-being are equally important. These completing goals require leadership judgments rather than profit solutions. Although there's the challenging and significance, I also see opportunity for change. This course changes how I understand innovation. I now see the innovation as creating new ways for the stakeholder to collaborate, rather than simply developing new technology. Lu agreed that the social change emerges through the interaction and shape meaning. In Australia housing crisis, the program is the more likely to stakeholder work toward common goals. Better financing and impact measurements can support learning and cooperation. Even so, uncertainty remains, so leaders need to adapt rather than expecting complete control. If I were working within the system, I would adapt an adaptive leadership approach because responsibility is shared across the governments, developers, investors, and the commission. The reading on change in completion challenges that meaningful change does not depend on formal authority. My role would be build cooperation, understand the different stakeholders' interests, and encouraging cooperative action. I will also adapt my contribution by focusing on long-term outcome for governments, investment certainty for developers, and housing security for communities to build trust and support cooperation. Assignment 2 told me how to understand a complex system. The later weeks of this course told me how to lead with one. I now see leadership as reflecting learning and enable conversion in uncertain environments. This course has shown me that complex social challenges require adaptive, reflective, and cooperative leadership. Thank you.